We want to go now to the other big story of the day, and that is Additional Solicitor General of India, Indira Jaising, who has spoken out once again against Justice A.K. Ganguly. Remember, he faces charges of sexual harassment from a former legal intern of his. The ASG made public the details of the incident that was outlined in the victim's affidavit before the Supreme Court, a panel of the Supreme Court, I should say. She has published those in an article in a newspaper. Indira Jaising now joins us live for her perspectives on this breaking story. Ms. Jaising, if I can come to you with my first question, what prompted you to go public with the victim's statement?
I think patience was running out. Everybody's patience was running out. It's the fact that prominent members of society chose to come out and speak in favor of Justice Ganguly. No less a person than the former Chief Justice of India has given him a character certificate. We've also had the former Speaker of the Lok Sabha support him. And here was this intern without any support. She has acted in a very responsible manner. She didn't put his name in the public domain when she first put out her story in the blog. She didn't open her mouth after the committee of 3 judges gave its report finding him prima facie guilty of having committed an act of sexual harassment, both verbal and non-verbal, and yet all these prominent members of society chose to come out in his support. And people then kept asking what exactly happened, what was it that he did which prompted her to write that blog. And that is the reason that I had to come out with this story, with this report, to explain to people that what he did was really gross.
I have a couple of questions related to what you just said. The first is, as you mentioned, the victim herself was reluctant to name the judge in the first place, or even detail what transpired on the 24th of December last year. Have you been in touch with her about whether her statements can be made public?
I can only assure you that as a responsible person, as a law officer, I would not put anything in the public domain without her knowledge and consent. And so, yes, this concerns her intimately, but I am one of those people who believes that the final decision in all matters has to rest with her. And as I said, she is certainly aware of what I have done.
You mentioned support for Justice Ganguly. Among the people who supported him were the former Wasoli Sarabji, a man I'm sure you are familiar with, also Ram Jethmalani, a lawyer with the Supreme Court. Does their support for him need to change now? They say he's innocent until proven guilty. That is a principle of justice. Does that apply here?
No. The presumption of innocence is not meant to be a shield for people who do not speak the truth in the public domain. There is no criminal case in process at the moment. This is a question of credibility of institutions, of the Supreme Court itself, because he is no less than a judge, a former judge of the Supreme Court. And I do not think that when you cease to be a judge of the Supreme Court, suddenly your standards of conduct can decline. In my opinion, once a judge, always a judge. Secondly, he is heading a Human Rights Commission, and he more than anybody else must know that women's rights are human rights. Thirdly, he was a judge who was on the NGO circuit lecturing to others about the rights of women. And this is the reason why I feel he has to be held to a different standard. And for him, the standard is beyond suspicion. Now, we have a committee of 3 judges of the Supreme Court which has said that he's prima facie guilty of sexual harassment.
And let me come to that, because once that's in the panel, the allegations are now public. Is this time now for the Delhi police to take suo motu action against Justice Ganguly, begin an investigation in the same manner as the Goa police went ahead with Tarun Tejpal?
I think the Delhi police are seeking legal advice, and they will act according to the advice that they get.
It does, surely that should include suo motu action in a case, and you mentioned a couple of sections of the IPC. And in fact, actually, let me come to that, because what sort of charges would Justice Ganguly face now, given the victim's allegations?
Well, I mean, there's hardly any doubt that if the Delhi police do choose to take action, it'll be Section 354 of the Indian Penal Code, read with Section 509 of the Indian Penal Code, which would make it verbal and non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature.
And if he's found guilty...
You might recollect, these were the same... I want to just tell you, you might recollect these were the same sections under which KPS Gill was prosecuted when Rupandel Bajaj made her complaint.
If he's found guilty under these sections, what kind of sentence could we expect in this case? As prescribed by law, of course.
Under the unamended law, the sentence would be about 2 years. But I think the point here is not about sentence. The point is about the morality of former judges of the Supreme Court of India, or of judges who are occupying the position of the West Bengal. From the law to the morality of the situation, and I would like the people of this country to debate whether these are the kind of people they want as judges.
The amazing thing about this case is there was not just one intern but two who came out and made similar allegations to Justice Ganguly, both the women saying that they knew of each other's of the assault and harassment on each other. Have you spoken to the second victim? Have you had a chance to talk to her about what happened to her as well?
No, I have not, but I do believe that there is a case here for a much, much wider inquiry into the way women are treated in important institutions in this country. I think, yes, there is a case made out for a commission of inquiry into the conditions of employment of women. Don't forget, for me, the Supreme Court is the workplace as well. I have worked in the Supreme Court for more than 25 to 30 years. It's my workplace as much as the workplace of interns, as much as the workplace of other lawyers. And I think a case is made out for inquiring into how women are treated in the legal profession, in law offices, with senior lawyers, and in courts.
One of the points that stood out for lay people outside of the legal fraternity is that this 3-judge panel took this victim's complaints and then pretty much said that they couldn't do anything about it because he was no longer a judge. Justice Ganguly was no longer a sitting judge. To the public, that just seems a cop-out. Well,
you know, the Supreme Court of India can do nothing to punish him whether he was a sitting judge or whether he was a retired judge. If he was a sitting judge, perhaps the Chief Justice of India could refuse to assign work to him. That has happened before in the case of Justice Ramaswamy. For the rest, the procedure is an impeachment procedure. But let me tell you that the petition of the Attorney General of India is still pending in court, and the question will arise over there whether the Supreme Court can do more.
And what exactly do you expect the Supreme Court to do if that petition proceeds forward?
Well, first and foremost, I think the Supreme Court should put in place a proper system for entertaining complaints against judges. There is no such system in place to my knowledge.
On the lines of the Vishaka guidelines, for example.
Can you, yes, despite the Vishaka guidelines, I'm now referring to judges. We have seen the Supreme Court publish regulations for entertaining complaints which women lawyers may have, which visiting litigants may have, which staff may have against anybody who sexually harasses. It is not exactly clear to me whether this committee of 10 that the Supreme Court has set up will also entertain complaints against judges. So the first thing we expect to see is a policy statement by the Supreme Court, by the Chief Justice of India, as to what is the procedure that they have put in place for entertaining complaints against judges. You're pointing out to me that she's not the only one, nor could she be the only one complaining about a retired judge. There may be judges who are now sitting against whom complaints may be in existence. So the first thing we need is a procedure in place to be announced by the Chief Justice of India for entertaining complaints against judges. The next thing, of course, would be a proper regime of law which would hold judges accountable for their conduct. Now, that again is something that Parliament has to do.
I want to come back to Justice Ganguly over here because, as you mentioned, there should be higher standards for someone who was a sitting judge of the very highest court of the land. What do you make of his behavior so far?
I can only tell you that it surprises me that for a person who has been, as I said, on the NGO circuit lecturing others on the rights of women, for a judge who was considered a judge who would want to implement the rule of law, for a judge who was considered an activist, for a judge who was considered a person who intervened with every policy decision of the government of India, his own behavior doesn't measure up to the standards he put out for himself. And you know, when he was in Bombay and he in his judgment made a comment against the late Vilas Rao Deshmukh, he said that Vilas Rao Deshmukh's conduct in continuing in office was shameful because it came after remarks were made by him in a judgment about him. Now, my question, of course, would be, has he lived up to his own standards? And the answer is no.
When we come back to this case again, you also have the allegations now public. Do you support the victim, or has the victim indicated in any way whether she will file an FIR by herself, or is she waiting for this case to proceed with the police first?
Well, I haven't spoken to her about this, but you know that when it came to the case in Goa, the police did record an FIR on their own, and as I said, in this case also the Delhi police are seeking legal advice and they will do what they are advised to do.